Greetings viewers, welcome to my channel, and today's video we're going to be reviewing the Glarry Jazz bass here in front of me. I got the blue version. It normally retails for $159.99 at the time of recording this video. I wound up paying $125 US shipped to my door off of eBay, and that actually it was a really good price considering what you get, and I'll go into some of those details. So this upgraded version, I looked at the original version, which is still available at the time of recording, but I wanted to get something a little different. A lot of my other basses that I don't have out right at the moment, they usually have rosewood fingerboards or maple fingerboards. This one here has a Canadian hard maple. It's a lighter wood, lighter grain, and I just never had a bass that had that. And this is my first time owning a jazz bass copy. This is an American Fender jazz bass clone. I'm actually very impressed by not just the quality of it. It does have some issues, don't get me wrong, and I'll go over that. But the bass for the price that I wound up paying for and what I got, I can't really complain about it at all. So keep in mind, I've never owned the first version, so I really can't comment on anything like that. There's plenty of videos out there that discuss some of the key differences. Rumblin' Man had done a nice review of both these basses and done a lot of work on that, so definitely check out his channel. I reached out to him and asked him a lot of questions before making my video here. This is going to be more of my subjective review of what I believe this bass, how it should be stacked up. And really, the first thing I would ask is, should you buy this bass? And my answer would be absolutely. This is a giggable bass. Some of the issues are, they are present, and it's to be expected for a bass of this price, but it is worth having, and those issues can be easily corrected. So some of the features that I like, that is part of this bass, so the tuning pegs, that hardware is pretty standard. I don't see any issues with it. They hold the string in tune, and I've had this for a little while now, and it definitely holds a tune well. Probably need to tune it every couple days or so, but I don't think that's a big deal, especially if it's changing in temperature and humidity all the time. This is the Canadian hard maple neck, as I mentioned. It does come with the Warwick strings, so it's got 45, I think 65, 80, and then 100. I've already set this bass up for 1.5 step drop, so it's actually tuned C sharp, F sharp, B, and E. I never had a bass that was set up specifically for that tuning. I am going to get some thicker strings, but it does well with the tuning. This is a 34-inch scale, so it is a full size, and it's got the same or very close specifications to the original Fender jazz bass, and 20 frets. It's got, again, the open peg tuners, the open gear tunes, which are right here. Check that out. And it feels like it has a satin finish, but it's a very light finish. It almost feels like the wood is naked, but further research after spending some time with this bass, it does have a finish, and it is missing a little bit on the edge here. I don't know how well you can see it, but not a big deal. I think that this bass neck is a lot better than what I've heard from the first version. Another thing to mention is that for the price point that this is sold at, even if you paid $159.99 brand new, this bass does not have any issues with the frets. I did not need to do any kind of work to the frets. That's incredible at this price point. None of the frets were, they're all level to each other. None of them were any issues whatsoever. Nothing was high. No fret. The fret rocker didn't pick up anything. My ruler, I was trying to think of the word. It's a notched ruler. It's basically a straight edge that lets me know if the neck is straight or not. There was no twisting of the neck, nothing like that, and you just don't see that. Not that kind of quality. You don't find that at the price that this bass is at. That being said, it was a lot less work for me to have to go and set it up. Obviously, I had to go and intonate for the tuning that I want and set the bridge saddle height. Other than that, it no buzzing or anything. Now, this bass, the depth of the neck here When I had the strings off, I took my micrometer. It's about 0.9 inches or maybe about 24 millimeters if you want to go metric at the nut. And then I think it was about 24, about the same amount here, maybe a little bit less, like 23 millimeters at the thickness of the 12th fret. Some people have said that the first generation bass from Glarry had a very chunky neck, but I have very long fingers, so I play on a 6-string bass, and my fingers can easily clear the 12th fret on a 6-string bass, so I definitely don't have any problem playing a 4-string, even if the neck was, chunky and the size of a baseball bat. But for some of the beginners, you might have an issue with that if you don't have long or big hands like that. The electronics, let me talk about those real quick. The electronics are Wilkinson. They are passive. That just has a volume, and a tone control. No battery inside or anything like that. And while the output overall dBu is lower than, say, your EMGs or any other active pickup or an active preamp where it's got a battery inside, it does well. It's got, it sounds like a jazz bass. It really gives you that nice traditional jazz-based sound, and I really can't complain about it. I just wish that these pickups were a little bit hotter, and I may wind up eventually changing them. But this is my first, at least this is my second passive bass that I have. My first bass I ever had is actually over here, and I'm about to go and try to repair it. It's an Ibanez GSR that met the demise of a broken neck, unfortunately, so that's for another video. Over here, the Wilkinson pickups, from what I heard, I've never owned one before. These sound pretty good. I'll do a separate video with some sound clips, but I really like the sound of it. It's workable. Some of the minor issues that I found too, there was some burring around the pick guard, probably just from sanding it or as they cut it out. Nothing beats taking the whole thing off, and I sanded it off with some fine grit sandpaper to get rid of that burring. And the pickups at the time were offset. They were actually further this way, up towards the top of it. And these strings, you want to have them right in the middle. And while I was able to get these to be a little bit more straight, it's just the way that they put these pickups in. They should have drilled a little bit further off to the side here. Not a big deal. It's pretty close now. Then I had to move the pickups down a little bit. They're pretty much straight now. But yeah, I think that is really the only major issue that I see. There's some spots here on the finish where it's not exactly smooth. I think that might have been from the shipping. There was a little bit of shipping damage here on the edges, but nothing terrible. The finish, if you can see it on camera, look how glossy it is. You can see American basswood, by the way, doesn't really have a lot of grain to begin with, but you can see the grain, and from a distance it actually looks really, really nice. The other thing that I found, which was very impressive for this price point, is that the bridge has a lot of enforcement over here. My Ibanez on the deck there only has the 4 corners. They actually add a little extra reinforcement here on the back. So this would be a good bridge to replace at some point. I say that because I like the idea of putting a high mast bridge on here, like a badass bridge or something like that. As far as some of where the clear coat was not really polished properly, I think a fine compound that I can go and buff everything out should even out a lot of that finish. But again, you can see my hand in the reflection. That's very, very nice to see at this price point. You just don't see it. And finally, the only other fault that this bass has that I really can't fault it for, since they did fix it, it's at the nut here. This is a bone nut. I did confirm that it was a bone nut. It's not a cheaper plastic nut. And I'll see if I can take a good, better picture of this here. I'm not really able to focus on it, but if you can see, they put a little shim right on the inside where this nut slot is. And it is glued in. It is being held in fine, but it seems like that bone nut, when it was cut, it was not cut exactly for this slot. It almost looks like this slot was already cut before the bone nut was made. Again, not a big deal. I know a lot of luthiers, and that's a good compensation factor so it doesn't rock. But it is glued in. It's nice and secure. Just, I'm probably nitpicking more than anything. But the overall quality, construction quality of the bass is very good. I really can't complain for the cost. So in my next video, I'll do some sound clips here. I do want to, well, I have to finish intonating and setting everything up for the tuning I'm gonna use. I'm gonna need to put on the thicker strings. I am gonna go and shield with some copper tape of the inside the cavity here. The electronics don't really buzz that much, but I like the idea of shielding my electronics so I don't have any of those buzzing, and it makes perfect sense, especially since I'm going to keep these passives in here for at least for the foreseeable future. To put in a set of EMGs is pretty expensive. It's another $180, $200, and I don't even know if I will even do that. If I can get a decent sound out of this, I really want to just kind of have this bass just to kind of knock around with. Obviously, I maybe use it for recording, but you get that nice traditional jazz sound, and I would not be ashamed to take this out on a gig if I ever were to get back into it. But hope this review's been helpful. If there's any questions at all, as I always say in my videos, please leave a comment in the description. I will be more than happy to go and check on whatever questions. I do plan on exploring this bass a little bit further as I spend more time with it. Again, I've had it for a while now. I haven't really done anything with it. Figured I'd make a video about it and see how it is. But hey, thank you so much for watching, and cheers.